Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate and I am a knitter based in Canada, and welcome to episode 2 of my knitting podcast. And honestly, we have a lot to go through today, so let's get right into it. Quick summary of what has happened since the last episode. It's been like 5 or 6 weeks. I just haven't had the chance to sit down and film one of these. And what I want to say is that this isn't a normal episode for me, but obviously it's episode 2, so I can't really say that. What makes more sense is that what I've been knitting on is not my normal knitting. So last time I talked to you, we were talking about how I didn't really have yarn. Canada Post was on strike and my yarn was stuck, my Knitting for Olive order that I was waiting for. So I didn't know when I was going to get it, and that's not really an issue, except I don't really have much of a yarn stash, like at all. Like, you can kind of see all of my yarn in the view right now. It's either on that board or in this table here, and that's just kind of my preference for the amount of yarn that I have. But that kind of came back to bite me when I didn't have a garment quantity of yarn at the beginning of October. So what I ended up doing is, for all of Socktober, I focused on socks. So I have a lot of socks to show you today. And then after Socktober was over, I got on a gift knitting kick. So I've got a lot of gift knits to show you today, which is really exciting. Let's get started with what I'm wearing. This is my Lauder cardigan, which you would have seen as a whip in my last episode, and it is now done. It's actually been done for a while. I finished it like maybe a week after filming my last episode, but the last time that you saw this, I was deep in a game of yarn chicken. Spoiler alert, I lost, but I think I'd only done one sleeve, maybe like half the button band, and yeah, I think I was still missing a sleeve, half the button band, and the collar. So I did, shortly after filming that, lose yarn chicken, had to buy more yarn. It arrived super fast, no issue at all. So let's get into the details now. This is the Lauder cardigan by Rebecca Clow, and I knit this in Sandnes Garn Peer Gynt in the color, I think it was called Brown Melange or Brown Mix, something like that. Just a note about me, I'm not very good with colors. I am just not a very artistic person, so when people start talking about like hues and balances and stuff, it really goes over my head. So take my descriptions of color with like a grain of salt, but I have noticed on camera that this color comes out like almost looking a little blue tinted, and that's not quite right. I would say that this is like a light to medium brown, and that the heathering in it is gray. So that makes it like a very cool toned, muted, neutral brown. And I'm actually loving this as a neutral. Also, this is my first time using Peer Gynt, and I have no issue wearing it next to skin, which I'm really happy about. For reference, I'm not like sensitive to wool too much, but there is like a limit to that. Like, I think a good range of this, if you're familiar with these yarns, is that I have no issue with like a Cascade 220, that kind of wool. But the very first sweater I knit, I'll put a picture up on the screen, I used some Hedgeholz Unspinderi. By the way, if I ever pronounce something wrong that is in your language, please correct me. I was corrected on some German yarn names in my sock vlog, and I'm really, really grateful for it. So always feel welcome to correct me, and I will do my best. So I got some Hedgeholz Unspinderi when I was in Oslo. It is a Danish yarn. I find that one to be really, really scratchy, and I think it's my only garment that I don't feel comfortable wearing next to skin completely. So I would say, if you're familiar with these yarns, on a scale of like Cascade 220 to Hedgeholz Unspinderi, I would put the Peer Gynt like slightly scratchier than the Cascade 220, but not enough to bother me. And I'm really happy about that, because I think this might be kind of a sweet spot for me, where It's not scratchy, but it's also not so soft that it will wear poorly. I can kind of speak to that at this point. Like I said, this has been finished for about a month now. I've probably been wearing this like twice a week or so, and I'm pretty hard on my knits, to be honest. Like, I will wear them out. I wear them for dog walking. And this morning I actually noticed the very first pilling on this, and it was minimal and just under my right arm. Like, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I picked most of it off. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the modifications that I made in this pattern. The first, technically a modification, is that I was off gauge. The gauge in this pattern was a little bit confusing, and I ended up using Peer Gynt, which is a DK, or like a heavy DK. I can see on Ravelry that others used like DK plus a mohair, so I was definitely like a little bit lower than that. I did size up to, I think, a 4.5 millimeter needle, so I ended up with like a nice open gauge drapey fabric, which I really like, but I was still a little bit off gauge. So if you came here, if you found me through my knitting math video, you can actually see in the background, this is the swatch that I was working with for that project. I didn't show pattern details in that video, but I did film that video because I was working through that math with this project. And I can say that it worked out great. The positive ease that I got out of this is like exactly what I wanted. I don't exactly remember how much ease it was, but I do prefer oversized knits. So I either picked like the highest range of the recommended ease in that pattern, or I might have even ignored it and gone higher than that. The other modification that I made with positive ease in mind is that I really don't like tight sleeves, and I was worried about that with this pattern. So I completely made up my own decreases for the sleeves. I started them a lot later, and you can kind of see here. Basically, I think I started them at like the elbow. I might have done like one or two along here, but I'm really happy with that because this seems like a really good sleeve to me. I think the biggest modification that I made was the button band. You can see that this is a double knit button band, and that was not in the pattern. I talked about this a bit in my last episode, but I followed a tutorial by Andrea Mowry that I will try to link down below, and I found it really helpful, but I will say that I also kind of cross-referenced that with a couple of patterns that I happen to have in my library that also have a double knit button band. So I kind of compared all of those to figure out what I should do with this weight of yarn, and it worked out great. There's one tiny thing that I would do differently with the button band. So when I was following the tutorial for the first half of the button band, which is the side without the buttonholes, it has you start at the bottom and work up to the top. And when I got up to the top, I realized that was perfect because, I'll maybe unbutton this so that you can see, but you get up to here, and then instead of binding off, what I did was put the stitches on hold, because that meant that when I went to go do the collar, I could just grab those stitches from on hold. And this here, this transition from double knitting to 1x1 ribbing, is like seamless, and it looks so good. My mistake is that I slipped my mind, forgot to do that for the other side. So for the other side, I started at the top, went to the bottom, and I didn't have stitches up here to put on hold to use later on the collar. So you really can't tell from like this angle looking at it, but unfortunately, the side of the button band that is more visible when it's closed is not as like seamless and perfect. But I am so happy that I did the double knit button band. It just has like really good structure to it. I didn't find it to be too difficult to do, and yeah, I really enjoy it. The reasoning behind it for me is that when I have a heavily textured knit like this one, I don't want there to be any other texture on the garment that like pulls the eye away and distracts from the texture. So on garments like this, I get really picky about like ribbing being nice and tidy rather than messy. And I was a little bit worried about a button band, a 1x1 rib button band here looking a little bit messy. So for me and my knitting, I just went with double knitting, and I think it looks really neat next to the cables. And let's finish up here by talking a little bit about the pattern. So this is the Lauder by Rebecca Clow. I think I said Lauder Cardigan at the beginning of this, but actually it's just called the Lauder because this is one of Rebecca's, I think she calls them mega patterns, and it is a cardigan, a pullover, and a vest all in one. And then each of those, I believe, has a round neck and a V-neck version. So as you can see, I did the round neck cardigan, but when you purchase the pattern, you get information for how to do all of those versions, which is just like incredible value for money. And it's such a great thing that Rebecca does. Now, if you ask me if I recommend this pattern, yes, 100%. I will probably be knitting another one of these. I'm thinking of doing a sleeveless version, basically. So like the vest, button-up vest. Yeah, I would probably do like a button-up vest, maybe in the V-neck version. I just think that would be a really nice thing for my wardrobe. Now, what I will say is that I don't think I would recommend this as like your first project with any particular technique. So like, for example, if you want to do your first cardigan, I don't think that this is the right pattern. If you want to do your first cables, I wouldn't recommend this. It's just so many cables that I think if you did this as your first or even second cable pattern, you might end up getting a little like burned out with it. There are, I think, 2 PDFs. The one that I was working off of is for both the cardigan and the pullover, and both the V-neck and the round neck. What that means is that it is a 30-page document, and most of the information in that document you do not need for your project. Now, that is not a problem because, like I said, I will probably go and make one of those other ones eventually. But what it means for the individual project, I would say, is that this isn't the kind of pattern that you download and then you're casting on like 10 seconds later. It's not brain off, hold your hand knitting. It's going to require a bit more thought and effort. Just to give you an example, the PDF I was working off of was 30 pages long. I took maybe an hour or two to go through, highlight everything that I need, delete the pages from the PDF that I didn't need, and after all of that, I had cut it down by like half. The last note that I will make about this pattern is that I do think cabling without a cable needle is a good technique to learn before diving into this pattern, just because I think that there are probably like 1,500-ish cable crosses in here. I haven't counted, but I do know that at the end of the body, it was like 1,000 cable crosses. So probably like 1,500 to 2,000-ish cable crosses in here. To me, that's just a lot of like picking up and putting down the cable needle, losing the cable needle. Let's get into my finished objects other than what I'm wearing. And we can start with my Socktober adventures. I won't include this one. I'll include this as a whip because it's a single sock. And we'll start with these 3. By the way, I do want to mention, I know that my channel name is Kate Knits Slowly, and I am about to show you a lot of finished objects. So little disclaimer here, my channel name isn't really a commentary on how slow or fast I knit. I don't know if I knit slowly or quickly, and I don't think that it matters. It's more of a reminder for myself to like slow down and enjoy the process. I'll also say that my motivation really comes and goes, so this happened to be a very productive month for me. Anyway, these are the Oona Socks. I had the 52 Weeks of Socks book out from the library at the beginning of the month, and this is the pattern that I started with. It is a pattern by Umi Knits, and I knit it in size 1 in Filcolana Arwetta. And what's interesting about this is that I only used 50 grams. I still have an entire skein of this. So I wouldn't go out and only buy 50 grams. It was very, very close, and I made some modifications. So this cuff, This leg is maybe half the length of what the pattern recommended. I just like shorter socks, so this worked out great for me. I also made the toe, I bound off like maybe a row early. So size 1, it is a very open gauge because of the lace, and that's what made the 50 grams work, which is great. This is a cuff down construction. I started with a German twisted cast on, which I did for all of the socks that I'm going to show you that are cuff down. And I will say, I don't really have a preference anymore between toe up and cuff down. I can definitely see positives and negatives of each of them. I would say the positive for the cuff down is that the cuff looks really nice. The German twisted cast on is just nicer looking than any kind of bind off that I've tried for the toe up versions. The con, I would say, of this construction is that it's harder to try on along the way and have it like fit as a sock. But I really loved this pattern. This was very easy to follow. I will say that I am very, very bad at memorizing charts. Whenever someone on YouTube recommends a pattern and says that the chart is memorizable, I cannot memorize it. And that was pretty much true with this. I think that it was like on the second sock, like towards the end of it, that I finally felt comfortable with the chart. And even then I was like referencing it sometimes. So I wouldn't call this a brain off knit, but it wasn't too complicated. I haven't done a lot of lace. I actually think this is my second lace project ever, and I found it perfectly fine. The other interesting design element on this, eye of partridge heel, which I think is really, really pretty. It is a heel flap and gusset, and then along that heel flap, there's a tiny border of garter stitch, which I talked about this in my sock vlog. I was very uncertain about it at first, and I've decided that it's not for me, only because I don't like garter stitch very much. But having like a design element along there is something that I really like. And I'll finish up here by speaking about the yarn. Love this yarn. I don't know how it comes across on the video, but these are such drapey socks. They're just nice and soft. They are merino and nylon, and someone mentioned in the comment section of my sock video that it's also very loosely spun. I'm not an expert in like, I don't spin at all, so I'm not an expert in like the spinning of yarn, but I believe that because I did find it a little bit splitty. However, totally worth it in my opinion for like these nice socks. I expect that they won't wear very well, but again, totally worth it because I think that these are just like really nice and soft. The other yarns that I'm going to show you for the socks that I made are more on the rustic side. So it's almost like a totally different category where if I was looking for like a soft fancy sock, I would get the Arwetta. If I was looking for something more rustic and durable, I would look towards the yarns I'm about to show you. The next sock that I cast on was the Mountain Walk sock by Florence Miller, which I knit in the Lang Yavol. That's the one that I was corrected on the pronunciation, and again, very, very grateful for that, and Yavol, I hope is correct. So, Mountain Walk socks. This is a faux cable in a rib design. I have mixed feelings about the faux cable. As you can see, I love cables. I do cabling all the time, and because of that, I almost wish that this was a real cable. My issue with it was that the cables on the two socks are different from each other, so I don't remember which is which, but if one was a faux left cable, the other was a faux right cable. And I found that one of them, I think I can tell which, yeah, these ones look tighter to me, so that tells me that it was the harder one. These ones look looser, which tells me it was the super, super easy one. And if I had known that in the beginning, I would have just done two of the easy sock. that probably would have been the better call for me, because I think it's cool that they are like symmetrical, mirrored to each other, but I don't know that that's worth it. I don't know that it matters to me that much. It's not something that like I notice when I look at them. So I think it's cool, but if I make this pattern again, I'll just do 2 of whichever one the easy one was. And for reference, the easy one for me was the one that didn't involve knitting through the back loop. And I actually don't mind knitting through the back loop as a combination knitter. I'm totally fine with it. Something about this as a faux cable was just like a little bit awkward to me though, and I couldn't get used to it. I did make some modifications here. The cuff is modified in the actual pattern. It just kind of, this is also cuff down by the way. In the actual pattern, it kind of starts with this pattern here, since it is a kind of rib anyway. I think that's pretty, but I kind of wanted it to match the other socks that I was making, so I went with like my standard cuff. I also modified the heel flap. It was a heel flap and gusset in the pattern, and that is what I did, but I subbed in the Eye of Partridge design just because of how much I had liked it on the previous sock. And the Lang Yavol comes with a thread of nylon, which I incorporated into the heel. Honestly, I don't think I needed to, but I figured since I had the thread, I might as well try it. And it did make for a very, very thick heel. I don't know if I have it around to show you, but the thread is like really thick. It's thicker than I expected it to be. And like I would guess that it is a weight heavier than like a lace weight strand of mohair. I think it's heavier than that. So I think that holding it with a sock yarn is giving you DK or heavier as a weight would be my guess. So it makes for like a really thick, dense heel flap, and obviously great for durability, but I would keep that in mind if you're working with this yarn. Before I blocked it, I was even thinking it might not like bend after blocking. It was that thick. Yeah, the other thing that I was thinking while making this sock is that it would make like a really nice, just plain ribbed sock with stockinette on the bottom. So I could see myself using this pattern and just not doing the faux cables at all in the future, and I think that would be really nice. And my final thoughts on this yarn is just that it's like a really good basic. This is definitely something that I'll buy again. I would consider it similar to the next yarn that I'm going to show you, but I think that this one has an excellent color selection, so I'll definitely be purchasing it in the future. However, totally different category again from this one, which was the Arwetta. This is like soft and drapey. I don't know if you can tell, this one is not drapey at all. It feels much like thicker and more substantial, even without the nylon thread. I would say that this is just like a nice sock. Like this is the one that I would reach for like to wear in boots on a winter day. Whereas this one might be for like an outfit. Okay, last finished object sock. This you saw as a whip in the last one, and it is the Berries and Bird Tracks pattern by Yuka. I knit this in West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply in the color Cornflower, which I love as a yarn. It has some blue-faced Leicester content in it, and it just makes it like nice and rustic. However, I don't think the color selection is quite as nice as the Yavol. So I would be kind of 50-50 torn between the two of them if I had to pick. This one was a toe-up construction, as you would have seen in the last video. What you haven't seen since then is that I actually frogged whichever sock I did first. I frogged it, restarted, then frogged it again, and this was my third attempt, all because of sizing issues that I was having. So with the toe-up construction, what I was trying to do was get the arch of the foot to fit like nice and tight while obviously having the heel like go over my foot. And I was just really struggling with that with this particular pattern for some reason. What I ended up concluding was that I was kind of in between sizes. There was like a big jump in the stitch count between the sizes that I was looking at, and I think that's why I was struggling so much with it. Obviously, you could change needle sizes and such, but yeah, long story short, the things that I tried first did not work. What I ended up doing was kind of making up my own size. From the other two socks that I made, I had figured out like a good stitch count that worked for me. So I just took that stitch count and applied it to this pattern, which actually ended up being a very easy modification, and these fit great. These are a very intricate cabled pattern that has some bobbles, and I just found this to be like really nice and potato chippy, because it's pretty regular that you're either finishing a diamond or finishing a bobble, and you always kind of want to get to the next one. So I really, really enjoyed the process of knitting up that cable pattern, but yeah, did have some issues with the fit. And I think you can tell the difference if you are new to sock knitting and curious about this. So this was cuff down versus toe up, and you can kind of see what I mean in terms of the difference in the aesthetics of the cuff, but I don't think it's a huge deal. Again, I would say I don't really have a preference between the two constructions at the moment. Oh, and one other funny thing is that this has an Eye of Partridge heel. That's not a modification. It had an Eye of Partridge heel in the pattern. But when I got to it, I was thinking, I don't remember this having an Eye of Partridge heel. Because when I did this one, this was the first one I'd ever done. So I went back and watched my first podcast episode where I showed this as a whip. I must have just not read the pattern that first time, because you can see in that video I did a slip stitch heel, not an Eye of Partridge. So it has an Eye of Partridge, and that is what I did this time. Only other note on this one is that to get that fit I wanted in the arch of the foot, I decreased needle sizes from like here to here. So this section here I did on a 2mm needle, and then for the toe and the heel and the cuff, that was all done on 2.25, which is what I used for the rest of these. This one was a bit of a journey, but really, really happy with the final result. And if I just look at these 3 finished pairs of socks, I'm very happy with the result here. Oh, one last note about the berries and bird tracks. If you are interested in the pattern, this is in 52 Weeks of Socks Volume 2. However, I had to give that one back to the library, so I ended up just buying it on Ravelry. I would recommend buying the Ravelry version for this pattern, just because Yuka is so technical and includes so much detail that there simply isn't space for in a 52 Weeks of Socks book where they're trying to like condense all the patterns onto one page, or each pattern onto one page. So if that's something you're interested in, the individual Ravelry pattern is different, and I would recommend it. Okay, we have one last finished object for today, and I have misplaced it. Where'd it go? Is it in here? No. So this was the end of my Socktober. When it got to November 1st, I was just in a gift knit mood, and I still am. So I am expecting a nephew soon, and I made him a baby bear balaclava. Now, I will say that this is hard to show, by the way. I wonder if I have like a doll that I could show it on or something. It's sort of like showing like a balloon that isn't inflated or something, because it's very like circular. Anyway, this is really cute. It's the baby bear balaclava. It is a pattern by Pernille Larsen from Knitting for Olive, And this is actually the second time that I've made it. I made one last year for my niece when she was 2 years old. Now she's 2, almost 3. And she loves this as a hat. I was a little bit nervous about it. It is knit in one strand of knitting for olive merino and one strand of their mohair. But you can see that the mohair is not included on the part just around the face. And then it doesn't tell you to do this in the pattern, but I didn't include it on the neck either. So no mohair on the parts that you'd be most worried about sensitivities. Even so, I was a little concerned about the mohair, but I asked my sister-in-law how my niece was doing with this hat, and she said that it's the only hat she has that she doesn't complain about wearing or like doesn't try to take off right away. So I thought that was pretty high praise. And I just think this is a great kid knit. If you have kids in your life and live in colder weather, this is just fantastic and obviously adorable. This is the color Dark Moose, by the way. They also have a color called like Brown Bear, but I think that they were out of stock of that when I was purchasing. This Dark Moose one, again, I'm bad at colors, but I would say that this is like a neutral to cool brown. Yeah, neutral to cool brown, and I actually really like it. One interesting thing is that actually, this is going to require kind of moving on to whips now, because I'm working on a second one. So that one's for my nephew. It was in the 6 to 12 month size, by the way. They don't have like a newborn size, but I think that looks just about right. These are also like really stretchy, so I'm not too concerned about sizing. This one is a second one for my niece, which I'm working on now. And this will actually be easier to show you the construction on. And what I want to say about the construction, I think it's kind of genius. And it looks a lot more complicated than it is. But I was trying to remember, and I made this last year. And I'm pretty sure that it was the first time I ever did short rows. So I would say that this is deceptively beginner friendly, however with a little caveat, and the caveat is that Pernille Larsen's style is not handholdy at all. Personally, I really like that because it means that you can like glance at the pattern and there isn't like paragraphs of text. You just kind of quickly see the line that you're at and it tells you what to do. However, it doesn't like explain techniques. So if you get to the part that says do short rows and you don't know how to do a short row, you're gonna have to go to YouTube and figure that out. So yeah, I would say don't be intimidated by this if you're a beginner. I still think it's a great gift knit. And I finished this, well not this one, it's not finished, but this one I finished in less than a weekend. I think I cast this on Saturday afternoon and finished it on Sunday. So great, quick gift knit for sure. Now, the construction of this is really interesting. So you actually cast on the, this is so funny to show, the face. You cast on with the ribbing for the face, again, no mohair there, and you work some 1x1 ribbing. I did a German twisted cast on for that, but I don't think that was in the pattern or necessary. I was just so used to that from all the socks. Then you pretty rapidly add stitches and work almost immediately with short rows to shape the sort of like crown of the head. And the only awkward part of that construction, I would say, especially if you're doing the baby sizes, is I think the pattern tells you to use like, I don't know if I have my needles in here. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm just going off topic. This bag is something that I sewed. This is the Plover pouch, which is a pattern by Noodlehead, and I highly recommend it as a pattern for a project bag if you are a sewist. I'm not even very experienced, and I found this to be fine. It also has really nice instructions for an interior pocket, which is where I just pulled this out of. So I think that the pattern recommends doing almost the whole thing on like small circumference circular needles. But to me, it's like, especially the baby size, I feel like you'd really be stretching out that face if you did that. So I found it to be like kind of awkward to determine when I should be switching from that and when I should just give up and use Magic Loop. So I found myself switching back and forth a few times. But other than that, very, very enjoyable process. After you've done those short rows, you again do some increases to make these ears and then shape them. And once you've done the ears, you can see that I've got those stitches on hold. In the end, they will be seamed up with Kitchener stitches. And then the back is shaped like this. I've been kind of like considering whether I should block this because obviously this will be fixed once it's on a kid's head, but the back looks a little weird and pointy right now. So I'm wondering if as a gift I should block it. I didn't block the one last year and it was fine. I figured that a toddler was just going to be like rolling in the snow, going outside when it's raining, that kind of thing. So it really wouldn't matter. But for the newborn, he won't. So it might be nice to block this and have it look nice. But yeah, final part of the construction. I am at the point where I still have to do a little tiny bit of Kitchener stitch here and then pick up stitches to do the neck portion. And yeah, final product ends up looking like that. Just the cutest thing in the world. So yeah, I would say deceptively beginner friendly as long as you're okay with a pattern that doesn't like hold your hand. However, I would also say that if you have an aversion to knitting stockinette flat, this is not for you. If you have an aversion to Kitchener stitch, this is not for you. And was there something else too? I don't think so. Kitchener stitch or stockinette flat, probably not the pattern for you. But otherwise, I find this to be like really, really enjoyable and like a nice quick win too. Okay, so that's my first gift knit of the year, which is really exciting. I'm trying to think what's the best order to do this next in. Maybe I'll do the other baby knit. Again, this is like not what I normally knit, so it's actually been kind of fun for that. Again, expecting a nephew imminently. I'll maybe put something on the screen if there's news while I'm editing this. But this is going to be a blanket. Hopefully he doesn't come too soon because this is about 1.5 inches long. What I'm starting to think though is that this will be a Christmas present and the balaclava will be the gift that I give him when he is born. Both of these kids I'm talking about have or will have birthdays between now and Christmas, so that's kind of messing with my like gifting strategies here. This pattern, it's a free pattern, so I don't really mind showing you. This is the Leafy Baby Blanket by Leila Alieva, and I'm really enjoying this. Again, I'm not a very experienced lace knitter, but so far I've found this to be really nice. It's also going quite quickly, despite the fact that it's 1.5 inches long. And it is worsted weight, or at least that's what I'm using for it. I am using Barocco Vintage. Do I have a ball band in here? No. I will put the color name on the screen and in the description, but I think it's really nice. It's this heathered color, and again, take my color descriptions with a grain of salt. I would say that this is a forest green that's got kind of like a jewel tone to it, and the heathered part is almost like, it's kind of brown, so it's almost like makes it earthy, which is really nice. It's definitely giving like forest vibes to me. And I think this is going to be really nice, especially with that brown bear balaclava. So I'm really excited about this. I am going to get back to it quite soon, but I am thinking it's going to be a Christmas gift, and hopefully you will see more of it soon. If you saw my gift knit video, I'm thinking of pivoting my gift for my niece to be a blanket too, because I just think she'd really appreciate it, and it would make sure that she's not jealous when I give one of these to her brother. Another thing I'll note about this pattern is that I have been following some instructions from a specific Ravelry project who made note of some modifications. So I will link to that below as well because I found that project to be really, really helpful. But yeah, that one is still very early stages, so I don't have much to say on it. I think now we're going back to socks, and I'll stay on the gift knits for just a second. I usually don't have this many whips, but since they're so small and they're gift knits, I think especially because they're gift knits, I kind of thought just get them on the needles. And actually my first strategy was just wind the yarn. Wind the yarn and then it'll be easier to start. And then once you start, you'll want to finish. So far that strategy is working. You can see, similar to the blanket, this is like nothing. This is going to be so hard to show you. This is really funny to show as a whip. I started this morning. This is the DRK Everyday Sock. And I am making this in the biggest size because this is going to be a gift knit for my dad. But what's interesting about this is the yarn. What I might do is finish the toe and then insert some B-roll because again, this is giving you nothing. This is the yarn though, which I wanted to show. It's really, really nice looking. I do have the ball band for this one, and it is hand dyed by a local to me dyer called Songbird Yarns and Fibers. And basically she does these yarns inspired by different kinds of birds. So this is a chickadee yarn, and you can see what it looks like once it's all wound up. And I think that this is a really nice, just like almost like a novelty gift. Like my dad is gonna get chickadee socks. I'm enjoying about this pattern is that it's ribbed, which made me think good for gift knits because that ribbing gives it some room for error. And there's actually notes about that in the pattern, which I wasn't expecting, and I'm really happy for it. It has a note in the pattern about like, ideally you would try this on as you're knitting it, but if this is a gift knit, here are some suggestions. So I'm really excited about that because I do want this to be a surprise. By the way, also doing this on 2.25 millimeter needles, again, doing the biggest size. All of these socks have been on Magic Loop, by the way. I wanted to like DPNs. I could never get them to feel comfortable in my hands, so I'm just Magic Loop all the way. And yeah. And I have one last sock and one last project to share with you today. And it is the single sock. So I'm calling this a whip, but I actually haven't cast on the second one yet. This is a self-drafted sock. If you saw my sock video, you can see the entire process that led up to this in that video. It was kind of an experience. But I basically had this hand-dyed yarn, which is a sock yarn from Amaranth Fibers, which is another local to me hand dyer. This is in the pattern Blue Roundhead. I would say it's like lightly variegated. And I'm gonna have to fact check myself here, and I'll be really embarrassed if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Blue Roundhead is a mushroom. I'm pretty sure this is named after a mushroom. But to me, this just looks like water. It really looks like water to me. So what I wanted was a pattern that looked like waves. And waves are obviously cables, or cables are obviously waves. So I ended up coming up with a cable pattern and then kind of adapting that to the stitch count that I knew worked for me. And I'm so happy with the result of this. I've basically got one long slip stitch cable and then this shorter twisted knit cable, which repeats a lot more frequently. And the part I'm really, really proud of here is that this cable starts up here. This was cuffed down. It starts up here. These two are mirrored. And then this half of the cable continues down the heel. So if you remember when I showed the Oona sock, I was talking about how it had that little garter stitch framing the heel a little bit, but I don't really like garter stitch. So when I started this one, I started to think, ooh, what if I didn't just stop that cable? What if I continued it down? And I think it looks really nice, and I'm really proud that I was able to figure that out, make it work, and that it's actually, in my opinion, like aesthetically pleasing. This is a twisted rib cuff, which is what I did for all of them, and another Eye of Partridge heel, but then obviously with that detail on the side. And yeah, I don't have a lot else to say about this, other than that I'm really proud of it. I do want to get to the second sock soon. However, as you can see, I've been on this gift knit kick. Yeah, I'm kind of in this mentality right now where, it being early November, I want to get as many of these gift knits started or done so that I'm not too stressed in November. And I feel like I still have time to accomplish that. So yeah, I think that's everything that I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you'd like to leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from and if you were working on anything while watching today, I would love to hear about that. Also, if you have any questions, especially if you're a beginner knitter and there's any like terms that I'm using that seem like I should explain them, please let me know. I want to make sure that my content is accessible to as many people as possible. So be sure to let me know. And thank you again for being here.